You're listening to the 90 Days Later podcast with Anna Charles, episode 117. Welcome to the 90 Days Later podcast, where I show you how life with less alcohol is more fun than you think. I work with high achievers who struggle to drink a glass of wine without it turning into 2 bottles. I'm the one they call when they want to take it or leave it. So if you want to change your relationship with alcohol that doesn't involve counting days sober, you're in the right place. Hi all, and welcome back to the podcast. Now today we're going to be talking big picture. It's going to be a lot of fun. I want you to start by thinking about your vision of yourself. How do you see yourself? And what do you honestly want for yourself? What is your deepest desire? If you were guaranteed that thing, what would it be? Would it be to make £1 million? Would it be to write a best-selling book? Have a baby? Get the dream job you've applied for? Become a concert pianist? Now, your self-vision is going to evolve over time. So when you do this exercise, you can decide to identify your self-vision for 2024 or for your life, whichever feels good to you. Right? That's where I want you to start. Now I want you to ask yourself, how do you need to see yourself in order to achieve that vision? Let's say you want to be a best-selling author. Maybe so far you just have a couple of chapters written in a notebook. And when you think of everything that needs to happen, everything you need to do to get to the point of being the best-selling author, think of how you're going to need to show up in your life. Think of how a best-selling author shows up in their life. This is not going to get handed to you on a plate. You're going to want to think about that. We want to think about this with any of these big picture goals we have for ourselves. Now, you might be thinking, Anna, you normally talk about drinking. What has this got to do with drinking? How does drinking fit into that? That is an excellent question, because that's the next thing I want you to do. I want you to actively look at how your drinking fits into your self-vision or not. Now, you're probably thinking, Anna, it doesn't. Of course it doesn't. I'm not sitting here thinking I want to be a best-selling author and I want to drink out of control. I'm not thinking I want to create my own business and not be able to stop drinking the wine every night. Or even, I don't want to be a best-selling author and still have alcohol as something that I even really care about anymore. No, I don't want that for myself. I mean, why else am I listening to your podcast, Anna? Now, that is an interesting perspective. If you are saying this, if this is what you're thinking, right, I don't want this really isn't part of that vision of mine. I mean, really, I want you to challenge yourself, really take yourself to the point where you are, thinking about that future vision and truly how does alcohol fit in? And it's interesting that it probably for you doesn't. Why do I mention this? Why is this relevant? Because it's kind of like we're talking out of both sides of our mouth. Right now, we're going around saying things like, I'm a drinker, it's who I am, I'm someone who just likes to keep the party going, I'm not able to handle the stress without a drink. Right? We go around using these words, and we use these words to describe us as who we are. We see it as part of our identity. I mean, I'm a drinker. I hear so many people say that I'm a drinker. Like I'm an electrician, I'm a mother, I'm however old, I'm a drinker. So while we don't rationally see drinking as part of our self-vision, when we're asked to describe that at the macro level, right, which is where I started the podcast, all these practice repeated thoughts about how we really see ourselves around alcohol are very much a part of the fabric of how we feel about ourselves. And they are, over time, working steadily and securely as a force to be reckoned with. So now you have looked at where you want to go, and truly I want you to just write down your deepest desire. You do not have to tell anybody this. I want you to next ask yourself, what is possible? Right, so you've got the dream, and now what's possible in whichever time scale you want to identify. And this is where we're going to get very, very, very specific with our self-vision. I want you to get to the point where you have an actual reaction, a physical sensation happen in your body. And whenever I think about where I want to go and what's possible for me it always manifests through a lurch in my stomach. Right? If I think, my gosh, I can see that it's possible. So for me now, it's running this business that, again, I've said many times, was never on the radar. Now it gives me such huge joy. It's kind of like everything, all of the good things. I get to help all of the people, which is a great feeling. I'm putting value in the world, which is a great feeling. And I'm creating a business for myself. I'm showing my children, I'm showing me what's possible for me, what I'm capable of. Right, so when I think about that, truly get into that mode of possibility, I have this big lurch in my stomach. So I want you to get some reaction from yourself. You know you're doing it when you're really, and maybe you're tingling in your hands, maybe your head goes fizzy, whatever it is. And then we're going to look at the gap between what you see as being possible and your self-vision. Now back to the author example. If your self-vision is to be a best-selling author, but from the point of possibility, you really can't imagine it being possible for you to show anyone those 2 chapters that you've written, right? It's just too embarrassing. You just can't go there. If that's where you are, then we have a gap. We have a gap between what you see as possible and where you want to be. This does not have to be a problem. This is why we have goals. This is why we break the problem down. But I'm most interested in how you feel when you do this. Do you go to, well, that's that then? I just can't ever imagine wanting to show anyone my work, so I guess that's it for me. I'm never going to be the best-selling author. Do you think about the could have beens and the should have beens? If I'd been more motivated, I could have finished my book. If I'd been more strong feeling, I could have actually shown that chapter to my husband, just the first chapter. If I'd worked harder, I could have made more of an impact. Now, this is an important juncture because you're basically saying you're not going to go after your self-vision. This is a choice. We can dress it up. We can say things like, I'm just not a good enough writer. I don't have the right temperament, etc., etc. But it's a choice. And when we get to that point, we're putting up a hand and we're saying, I'm settling. We're letting ourselves off the hook. We're excusing ourselves. We're settling. And this is direct settling. Now, what has alcohol got to do with this piece? A lot. Because 2 of the reasons why we drink are to seek pleasure and avoid pain. We might be able to paint our self-vision in our minds very clearly. And I really do encourage you to do that and spend a lot of time thinking about this on a regular basis. So we might have this very detailed vision, but every time we go towards it, when we see what we have to do towards it, and all the stuff that feels hard and difficult and yucky and inconvenient, right, all those times when we have to potentially embarrass ourselves and really put ourselves out there, when we don't think we can handle those feelings, and when we push that away in place of the haziness of a couple of glasses of comfortable wine on the sofa, right, in place of reassuring ourselves that we will for sure do it tomorrow, just not now, that is how we settle. Alcohol becomes an enabler that helps us to keep settled in our life. We use the fear of facing and feeling those feelings, the rejection, the embarrassment, all the other things that we'll have to do in order to move forward, right? To create this new vision of our life that we don't yet currently have. When we put those emotions at the forefront, we invariably forget about our self-vision. We forget why we're doing it. We become very small focused on how we're feeling in this exact moment. And I see this as kind of indirect settling, right? And the more we do this, the more we're making settling okay. It becomes the way we function. This is the life I have. Might not really be what I want. Could be worse. Could be better, but I'll settle for what I've got. Bird in the hand, better than two in the bush, that kind of thing. And we do this on repeat until we no longer see ourselves as this being an active settling choice. Our self-vision is something that just becomes really impossible, and we see ourselves as this is just the life that we have. So I want to ask you, how are you showing up in your life today? Do you even know? So often I see people stuck in the rhythm of choosing comfort over discomfort, for instance. Certainty over growth. What we have for what we want. But I want to just take one question here and ask you, imagine how you would see yourself if you could change your relationship with alcohol. Maybe if after 30 years of drinking, you were able to learn how to take it or leave it. Or even that you figure out you do have actually a stop button, despite what you've been advertising to the world for the last decade. I want you to go to that place where you could imagine achieving that. What then? What happens then? I see two direct impacts of this. First, this reawakens your self-vision. You're going to draw back the curtain on all the stuff you hadn't seen for so long, on the energy, the better sleep, the no longer beating yourself up with negative thoughts each morning, all the behaviors that will have you taking action and being willing to do the work, right, towards creating the self-vision you have for yourself because, hey, I've done this drinking thing, and if I can solve that, what else can I do with my life? And secondly, how would you feel just knowing that you've cracked the drinking thing, right? You're in the after state. I've done this. I don't have to think about this anymore. I cannot tell you how significant this one thing alone was for me. It's so powerful, and so worth it. You know how people say, if I can do it, anyone can? Well, having achieved a change in relationship with alcohol for yourself, it's like you saying to yourself, look what I was capable of. What is next for me? And at that point, my friend, the idea of settling, whether that's because you think it's just how it is or out of choice, settling for what you have becomes a distant memory. You're going to be looking at the you who isn't constrained and who isn't curtailed by the alcohol. And this, my friends, becomes the starting point of a whole other adventure. This is when that self-vision that we started the podcast with starts to be something that you believe can happen in your lifetime. Think about who you would be then. So this episode was a little different. I took you beyond the everyday techniques, and I took you into thinking about what you want for yourself, into thinking about what's possible. This is something I encourage you to do on a regular basis. I still, to this day, have a kind of pinch me, I cannot believe this is where I am. That I have no draw at all, towards the Chablis, at all. That is there for you. That is possible for you too. If you resonate with what I'm saying, if you are nodding along, if you have been nodding along for months, if you've been listening for a while, is it time for you to stop settling? Yes, listening to this podcast is better than nothing. I see it as a way of redressing the balance of living in a world where alcohol is glamorized and socialized. But if you want to go all in on your life, then what now? What's next? It's one decision away. Right? Think of it in those terms. It's not this big scary, I've got to do all these things. It is one decision. The decision to work with me. I want you to email me, anna@90dayslater.co, to get started. The next steps are simple. We will speak at a consultation call. This is totally free, to decide if we'd be a good fit in working together On the call, I will tell you how I could help you, and I will build the exact plan to get you to your goal. So you will leave the call knowing what we have to do to get you to where you want to be. It is the best thing. So I want you to do it today. It's time to stop settling and to start taking forward action. It is simple, it is doable, and it is far more fun than you might think. All right, I hope to speak with you this coming week, and then I'll see you next week on the podcast. Bye. If you like what you're learning in the podcast and you want to take the work further and achieve total freedom around alcohol, let's talk. I help my clients stop reaching for that first glass of wine the moment 6 p.m. rolls around, and they don't miss out on life. Email me for more information on anna@90dayslater.co. And if you did enjoy the show, I'd really appreciate if you'd leave a rating and review to help others find the 90 Days Later podcast.